Hey fellow gamers, Chatty Sisa here. The recent release of the Baldur's Gate free game has initiated, again repeatedly, a discussion on which games are better, turn-based or real-time. I've compiled a small list of pros and cons which we can review together if you're interested, but before we do so I would like to highlight on this spot again that this is just my subjective personal opinion based on my own experiences, so please take it with a grain of salt. And also, before we proceed, I would like to thank on this spot everybody who already subscribed. This is one of those gaming blah blahs where I again don't have like a completely pre-written script. I have just a couple of points in front of me here on the screen, so in case you're wondering where I'm looking. And I would like to discuss, like I said, the pros and cons of both playstyles. I have games which are both, so I will speak mainly from my own experience, but I did a little digging into the discussions that we have seen over the years, and mainly now recently, as I mentioned, people these days are used to mostly to real-time, especially when we talk about RPGs. So usually they call this turn-based game style, outdated. I don't really think it is. I think there is a time and place for both of those. Okay, so let's start with the turn-based planning and positioning. So what I mean with that is basically that the turn-based games have the advantage that you have the time to look at your surroundings, look at, where would you have the best advantage in case of a fight, like which position would you take, how can you use the surrounding area, where would you place and position your companions in the game, so you can plan pretty much ahead before a fight or before you go and fulfill a task, and you can fully use and utilize that planning time or the time that you have for planning in advance. And usually it is a big bonus once you get into a fight, because you can basically outwit your adversary or your enemies. The easy handling of bigger party. If you are having multiple companions which have a wide variety of skills available, you have the opportunity to manage each one of those. You can position them, as previously mentioned, wherever you want to, and then you can direct every single one of your companions, and you can tell them which, in which order, which skills to use, when you decide exactly how they're going to react to the situation, every single one of them. It's usually also, for turn-based games that you have this kind of, let's say, traditional skills in your party. So you have like a healer, for example, which is usually there somewhere in the background, helping out if the main characters which are at the front and driving the fight, if they get hurt too much. So the healer is an important character that needs to stay somewhere in the back usually. This is also one thing which is like the turn-based style, which is also feasible for, let's say, this kind of old-fashioned or old-style RPG games, or these classical ones. It doesn't mean that they are outdated or not modern. It just means that they have a different style of companions skills, right? The next thing which I've highlighted here, relaxed style. What that means, usually the turn-based games are preferred, by people who, want to calm down, maybe after, a heavy day where they just want to, play some relaxed game, where they don't mind if they get interrupted, by something happening around them, or if you need to take a break or something. It's easier to do with turn-based games because you can just simply put them on hold. Is much easier than real-time games. Real-time games have certain moments where you just have to focus and go on, and that's it, right? So the relaxed style is something that suits also a couple of players more than someone who's looking more for the action, right? Learning at own pace. What I mean, it's usually, if you have this turn-based style of games, you have a lot of the skills which you acquire slowly over time, and you have time to, you know, learn all of those skills usually much better. You have a longer time to use the one which are existing, and then you just add slowly one after another. Yes, you might say you have the same in real-time games as well, let's say Witcher, right? You also acquire slowly over the time some of the upgraded skills, but you need to apply them much quicker. Let's say if a fight happens, you don't really have the time, you know, to play around with it. I think the learning curve here is a bit steeper, but like I said at the beginning, this is my own subjective experience or my own subjective view, so it might not be, you know, the same for you as well. But this is something which I think turn-based is having something as a positive. Something that might be considered negative is the slower story pace. So if you are going to play a turn-based game, you might want to, you know, move ahead in the story a bit faster, but you will be still put on hold a little bit through the fights which take a bit longer. So if you are stuck in a fight, yes, like I said, it can be an advantage. You can say to every party member what they are going to do, but this is also something that takes in reality more time, of course. So in order to progress in the story in a turn-based game, it will be more slower than in a real-time game, you know. So this is something that you need to keep in mind as well. The turn-based has a slower pace. The being an observer point here is mainly something that was mentioned in a couple of discussions online. If it gets too tedious, let's say if you are like micromanaging a lot of the stuff around you, you can not have the same kind of immersion as with the real-time games, and you sometimes can feel just like an observer. You do everything up front, what needs to be done, and then for some time you are just watching what's going on and what's happening, and you're not really entering the game actively, and that can take you out of the immersion. And as mentioned before, you can slip easily into micromanagement, so it can go into very minute details. You maybe try to, you know, go ahead and try to find this one specific potion, and you need this exact item for the potion, so you're going to look for it, and in the end maybe you just use that potion once or twice in the whole game. So it is something that I call unnecessary micromanagement. Yes, there are some items that you will want to have in your game and that you consider to be really necessary, but especially when you're playing a game for the first time on a turn-based style, you just want to like look around and you want to use everything that's possible and everything that's available to you, and that's when you slip into this micromanagement, and again that just brings you to the position where the game takes unnecessarily too long and people get bored and people just feel like an observer. So this is something that can happen to you, and it's something that maybe you should try to avoid when playing this type of games. On the other side, I'm mentioning a couple of points. Some are positive, some might be negative for you. So the comparison towards the turn-based games, you have faster action and story. Like I mentioned before, you move faster in the story, you manage faster to get faster from point A to point B. Also the action is much faster because you are not managing all of your companions. You don't have so many. You are not. It's not necessarily usually to manage everything, all of their skills at once. The action sequences are faster. The fights are faster. That's why it's called real time. They actually happen in real time. Like I mentioned before as well, it's fun for multiplayer. So if you have multiple players in your game. So not just, you know, AI companions in game, but real people who are playing together with you, whom you do not need to like order around, let's put it this way. Everybody's, you know, just using their own skills. Then it's more fun to do it real time. You would probably get bored as well here if you would go into the turn-based style, because everybody would have to wait for the other person to finish. So this is definitely some advantage here. The real-time games require full focus, and that is the basically the opposite to what I have mentioned for the turn-based as more relaxed or slow-paced. You really have certain passages in those games where you just have to play. You can just simply, you know, stand up because, I don't know, your phone's ringing, or because somebody wants to talk to you, or because you need to take a break. It's just not possible in some of the parts of the game, so you really need to go through this part with your full focus and no interruption, no pauses, no nothing. And that is also something where you have to like account for it upfront. Like, do I have now the time to play, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours uninterrupted, focus on this game? Is there something that I need to do? So it might not be feasible or suitable for everyone. This also means the games are more stressful, which is the next point. Basically your adrenaline's high and you just, you know, shoot everything around you. If you're playing a shooter, if you know, if it's a game that requires you to play also with a couple of companions where you're not alone, then it's even more stressful because you need to pay attention to what they are doing, and it's not something that would be maybe feasible for you after a crazy day. It's just more adrenaline. The immersion is without pauses. That's also something that I have already mentioned, so you need to keep that in mind up front. And you have less control over your own party. So like I said, that party which is with you, when you have maybe the AI companions, it's just 1 or 2, just a very small party. And sometimes, you know, because they are actively using their own skills on their own, you don't even have the time, like, you know, pull up the HUD and you just choose one skill that you want them to use. They already used some, and you just need to wait now because they're in cooldown. So you have less opportunity here to order them to do some specific action, and some people prefer that because they can focus, like I said, on their own gameplay and just on their own main character. Some then miss this kind of interaction with their companions and with the full usage of the skills that they would like to have. Honing reflexes, that's the advantage here, I think, in the real-time games. While the turn-based ones are really good for this, you know, like strategic thinking and planning and positioning, the real-time games often do not give you the opportunity to do that. You just really need to react instantly to what's happening in the game, and you have to have pretty fast reflexes for some of the games. The reflexes here are the most important part, not the planning and positioning like for the turn-based games. And it can have actually good results also in real life, to be honest. I have seen a good documentary which was basically highlighting like which advantages playing games has in real life. They actually did a test with people like in a driving school on a simulator, with people who were gamers and people who were not gamers, and to their surprise they realized that people who are gamers and are playing often real-time RPG games or real-time games have better reflexes, and they were able to avoid more of the accidents than actually the people who were not gamers, and they were testing it on a group of experienced drivers already. So it was very interesting to see that. So I think this is one big advantage of the real-time games, to be honest. The immediate results, that is something which is also an advantage against the turn-based or versus the turn-based games. In the turn-based games you have to you know, wait until a certain round passes, until everybody played their move, to see the result of, you know, what effect it had on the fight, for example. In real time you see the results immediately, you know, you do some action and you immediately see what it changed on the situation, what changed in the fight. You know, now you have less opponents, or now you have boxed yourself into a corner where you can't get out of. There is really a opportunity here in the real-time games to see what mistakes you're making right away and maybe try to avoid them in the next fight. I think both have their pros and cons. In the end, it's up to you to decide which ones you would like to play, and I hope that at least a little bit this kind of small summary which I did was a bit helpful for you. So thank you very much for watching, stay tuned and game on!